Before Meghan, there was someone else. No one knew her name for sure. No one ever saw the ring. But Prince Harry once planned to propose truly. It wasn't a fleeting romance. It wasn't some youthful rebellion. She was the only one who made him believe he could love without permission. But just as he prepared to take that step toward her, the palace stepped in first. No announcement was needed. No outright ban was issued. They simply did what the royal family has done for generations, crush what they cannot control. So why did a love on the brink of marriage vanish without a trace? The answer doesn't lie in Harry's heart. It lies within the House of Windsor, where love always comes second to image, and personal choices always come at a price. You think you've heard the whole story, you haven't. The truth is only just beginning to surface. In the pages of Spare, Prince Harry writes with raw emotion about a woman who once lit up his world, Chelsy Davy, the love he longed to marry, but whose dreams were crushed by the very family he called his own, the British royal family. She was the first person who made me feel free, he confesses, but also the first to show me that the palace would never let my love win. Their romance, intense and genuine, was smothered by unwritten rules, covert schemes, and the invisible might of the monarchy. This isn't just a tale of a love lost, it's a clash between heart and crown, where power always triumphs over emotion. What did the royals do to control and extinguish Harry and Chelsy's dreams? Botswana, 2013. Prince Harry sits alone by the Limpopo River, the moonlight casting a silver glow on his face, where the first lines of time etch their mark. In his hand is a worn leather bracelet, a gift from Chelsy Davy, the woman who once set his heart ablaze, who made him dream of a wedding and a future unbound by the crown. The night breeze carries memories of days when they held hands under a star-filled sky, when Harry believed their love was strong enough to conquer any obstacle. But that dream shattered, not because their love faded, but because the palace intervened, snuffing out his plans to propose before they could even take root. Now it's just him and his solitude, clutching the remnants of a love choked by royal decree. Each memory pulls him back to 2004, when it all began, a radiant start that was also the genesis of a predestined tragedy. Harry met Chelsy Davy in 2004 in Cape Town at an outdoor party by Camps Bay shore. She was a 19-year-old law student with golden hair and a radiant smile, captivating him with her sincerity and untamed spirit. Unfazed by his princely title, Chelsy treated Harry like an ordinary man, giving him his first taste of freedom. Their love ignited swiftly like wildfire, sweeping through dry grasslands. Within weeks, Harry whisked Chelsy to Botswana, where they roamed endless plains, slept under a canopy of stars, and dreamed of a future beyond the palace's grip. In Lesotho, they worked side by side on charity projects, hand in hand, laughing like best friends. Chelsy didn't hesitate to wade through mud to build schools, and Harry, for the first time, felt no need to prove himself. "This is where I feel freest," he said, by a lagoon watching elephants lumber past. Chelsy leaned on his shoulder, whispering, "So we'll always come back here, okay?" But even in that moment of bliss, Harry couldn't shake the fear that the palace would never leave them be. In London, behind the cold walls of Clarence House, their flame of love went unnoticed, or rather unaddressed. Queen Elizabeth II was preoccupied with national crises, from political tensions to economic woes. Prince Charles grappled with a media storm over his relationship with Camilla Parker Bowles, as the world still mourned Princess Diana. For a fleeting moment, Harry and Chelsy were free to love without interference. They were two young souls immersed in a passionate romance, believing the world couldn't tear them apart. But that freedom was an illusion. The British monarchy, with its centuries of power and control, never lets a relationship, no matter how beautiful, escape its scrutiny. Harry and Chelsy's love, however bright, couldn't withstand the storm quietly brewing, a storm called the royal family, with the power to crush every dream. By 2007, after 3 years of passionate love, Prince Harry stood at a fateful crossroads. In his heart, Chelsy Davy was more than a girlfriend. She was the only light piercing the darkness of his pressured royal life. With her radiant smile and free spirit, Chelsy made Harry believe he could face the world, that their love was strong enough to overcome any barrier. He began to dream of a grander future, an engagement ring, a wedding, and a life with Chelsy, where he was no longer the spare prince but simply the man she loved. But that dream, like a sandcastle on the shore, was swiftly swept away by the harsh waves of reality. In September of that year, London was rocked by a scandal that shook the palace. Harry, in a moment of recklessness, left an unwanted mark after a night of partying at a Chelsea bar. Photos of him stumbling out, shirt disheveled eyes, glaring and rudely shoving a paparazzo, flooded the tabloids. The Sun screamed, "Spoiled Prince Harry tarnishes the crown." Daily Mail, with its usual venom, sneered Harry, the royal disgrace. Each article was an arrow aimed at Harry, but he wasn't the only one wounded. Chelsy, ever by his side, became a target too. One Express piece even questioned, "Is Chelsy Davy the reason Harry's out of control?" The public began to wonder, was Harry truly worthy of his role? Did he have the character to represent the crown? Or was he just a rebel threatening the palace's stability? Amid this storm, Clarence House, Prince Charles's power center, could no longer stand idly by. An emergency meeting was called that night, the air thick with tension like a courtroom trial. In a discreet room with dark wood-paneled walls and dim light from an antique chandelier, Harry and William's private secretaries, along with a cadre of senior media advisors, gathered around a long mahogany table, stacks of documents before them. Prince Charles, face stern, sat at the head, his piercing gaze sweeping the room. This wasn't a family chat, it was a campaign to save the crown's image from the rebel prince. A senior advisor, Edward Lane, a middle-aged man with a measured yet razor-sharp voice, rose to present his assessment. Flipping through pages, he spoke without emotion. "Prince Harry is a valuable asset to the royal family, but his recent behavior poses unacceptable risks." He began, his eyes scanning the room. "We must evaluate all factors affecting his image, including his current relationship with Miss Chelsy Davy." Chelsy's name dropped like a silent bomb. The room fell still, save for the dry rustle of turning pages. Lane continued, his tone cold but calculated. "Miss Davy is intelligent, independent, and naturally charismatic. She captivates the public, drawing attention whenever she appears. But that's precisely the problem. Chelsy is not easily controlled. She doesn't follow protocol or step back from the prince's spotlight. Worse, she has the potential to become a second Diana effect, a woman who overshadows Harry, stealing every gaze and eclipsing the royal system." The phrase Diana effect froze the room. Diana, the woman who shook the throne with her irresistible charisma, who defied the palace with her authenticity and compassion, remained the monarchy's greatest fear. No one in that room wanted another woman, no matter how talented or alluring, to threaten the stability the palace had painstakingly rebuilt since Diana's tragic death. Another advisor, voice trembling, added, "Miss Davy acts on emotion. She can't handle media pressure. If this relationship continues, we risk a scandal far greater than Harry's recent antics." Prince Charles, presiding over the meeting, nodded slowly, his eyes cold as steel. "This relationship is fostering a negative image for the monarchy," he concluded, his voice low but commanding. "We cannot allow Harry to jeopardize the stability we've worked so hard to maintain. Ensure this matter is handled discreetly but effectively. No formal ban was issued, no decree proclaimed." But from that moment, Chelsy was in the crosshairs. She was no longer Harry's love, she was a media risk, a threat to be managed. Meanwhile, in London, Chelsy began to feel an invisible pressure. Paparazzi hounded her everywhere, from her small Notting Hill flat to the cafes where she secretly met Harry. They captured every moment: her radiant smile beside Harry, her weary frown, her accidental coffee spill on her shirt. Articles appeared with alarming frequency, branding her with cruel nicknames: party girl, unfit girlfriend. One Mirror piece mocked Chelsy Davy, the girl who could cost Harry everything. Each headline was a dagger aimed not just at Chelsy, but at their love. The pressure weighed on her like an unseen net, tightening daily, leaving her gasping for air. In a rare moment of vulnerability with a close friend, Chelsy curled up on her sofa, in her tiny flat eyes red, clutching a cold mug of tea. "I can't handle the spotlight," she confessed, her voice trembling, each word a struggle. "It's like I'm stripped bare before the world. Every step, every word is judged. I just want to love Harry, but they won't let me." She still loved him, her heart aching at the thought of letting go. But deep down, she began to grasp a painful truth. Their love wasn't just battling the press, it was up against a far greater, colder force, Harry's own family. Harry, thou desperate to shield Chelsy, started to see their love was under siege. He tried whisking her away from London to quieter places, but each return brought intensified pressure. One rainy evening, as they sat in a small pub on the city's outskirts, Harry gripped Chelsy's hand and said, his voice hoarse with emotion, "I won't let them tear us apart, Chels, I promise." But his eyes betrayed his helplessness. They weren't just the press, they were the palace, his family quietly pushing Chelsy out of his life. He knew no matter how deeply he loved her, he couldn't fight the system that had shaped his fate since birth. Unbeknownst to them, in the shadows of Clarence House, a plan was set in motion. Silent, subtle, but as precise as a sharpened blade. Advisors began their work, from guided articles attacking Chelsy to private meetings with Harry, where he was reminded of his duty to the crown. Chelsy Davy, no matter how talented or captivating, was not to be part of the royal picture. And Harry, no matter how much he loved her, couldn't have foreseen that their love was doomed in that cold meeting room where hearts had no place and strategy was everything. By 2010, the palace's pressure on Harry and Chelsy's relationship grew suffocating. One late afternoon at Clarence House, Harry was summoned to a private meeting with Prince Charles in his personal study. The room felt heavy-scented with old wood and lined with royal portraits that seemed to watch every word. Charles, face stern, sat behind a massive oak desk, his gaze sharp yet weary. "Harry," he began, his voice low but unyielding, "you must understand that your role isn't just about living for yourself. You represent the crown, the family, the nation. Your relationship with Miss Davy, it's causing unnecessary problems." Harry clenched his fists, struggling to stay calm, his heart constricting. "Chelsy hasn't done anything wrong, Father," he replied, his voice quivering with anger and frustration. "She's the woman I love." "Why is that a problem?" Charles shook his head, his eyes icy. "Because she's not suitable, Harry. She's too free, too much like your mother. We cannot let history repeat itself. You need someone who will stand behind you, not someone who draws every eye." The words "like your mother" stabbed Harry's heart. He stood, his voice nearly a shout. "I'm not you, and Chelsy isn't mother. I won't let anyone decide who I love." But Charles merely looked at him, his gaze unwavering. "You'll understand, Harry. For the sake of this family, you'll understand." Concurrently, Queen Elizabeth II, though not directly intervening, expressed concerns about Harry's relationship through her trusted advisors. A confidential Buckingham Palace report sent to Clarence House, marked top secret, stated, "Miss Chelsy Davy commands public appeal, but her forthright personality and lifestyle are ill-suited to the royal image. Measures must be taken to ensure this relationship does not progress further." While issuing no direct command, the Queen gave tacit approval for advisors to act. Secret meetings were held, guided articles, amplified pressure on Chelsy, and subtle warnings reached Harry. The palace needed no public decree, they simply ensured Chelsy would retreat. Harry did everything to protect Chelsy. He took her on far-flung trips, South Africa, Botswana, places where they'd once been happy to escape the press's glare. But each return to London brought a new wave, vicious articles, whispers from palace insiders, and scrutiny from Harry's former friends. "I feel like I'm being pushed out of his life," Chelsy confided to a close friend one rainy London night, her voice breaking. "I love Harry, but I don't know if I can fight the whole world. They want me gone." Harry, though heartbroken, couldn't deny the system was against them. Each time he tried to defend Chelsy, advisors issued veiled warnings. "Consider the monarchy's image, Your Highness." In a rare confrontation with one of Charles's advisors, the man said bluntly, "Miss Davy is not what we need for the monarchy's future. If you persist, you'll both suffer." Their love, no matter how fierce, began to falter under the palace's relentless force, a machine that never relented. In 2011, the world's eyes turned to Westminster Abbey for the wedding of the century Prince William and Kate Middleton. London glowed in spring sunlight, with millions lining the streets, waving flags and cheering for a historic moment. Kate, in a pristine white gown, walked beside William as a symbol of perfection, a couple meticulously crafted by the palace to embody stability and the monarchy's future. Church bells rang, applause echoed, and radiant smiles on television painted a flawless picture. But in the shadows of that grand day, a quiet tragedy unfolded, hidden by the crown's brilliance. Chelsy Davy, as Harry's official girlfriend, attended the wedding in an elegant emerald dress, tailored to highlight her natural beauty. Her smile dazzled, but her eyes held a sadness only those closest to her could see. In photos captured by the press, Chelsy was always positioned off-center, as if the palace deliberately nudged her to the margins of history. She wasn't photographed with Harry in official moments, wasn't mentioned in speeches, and didn't appear in frames with royals. She was merely a guest, a faint shadow in the day's radiant tableau. Harry, standing beside William as best man in crisp military uniform, couldn't take his eyes off Chelsy. In rare moments during the ceremony, when the public's gaze shifted, he stole her hand in a secluded corner of the abbey. "You're still the most important person to me, Chels." He whispered, his voice thick with emotion, his grip tight as if to hold her forever. But his eyes betrayed a deep powerlessness, a pain he couldn't hide. He knew no matter how much he loved her, she didn't belong in this world. The palace, with its unwritten rules and invisible power, had long decided their fate. Their love, once as fierce as a Botswana flame, was now cracking under relentless pressure. During their years together, Harry had served in the British Army deployed to Afghanistan, facing dangerous missions in isolation. Those months apart left their relationship fragile. Chelsy, though she kept in touch through handwritten letters and brief calls, often felt alone. Harry, bound by military duty and escalating royal responsibilities, couldn't give her the full commitment she craved. His promises of "I'll be back soon" became empty as deployments dragged on and royal events pulled him away. Chelsy, with a heart full of love but also pride, began to feel sidelined. In a rare London meeting, she looked at Harry, her eyes a mix of sorrow and anger. "You say I'm everything, but why do I feel like I'm always second, Harry?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The army, the palace, the press, everything matters more than me." Harry tried to explain, but his words were weak excuses. "I don't have a choice, Chels. I have to do these things, but I love you, you know that. You know." Chelsy shook her head, tears streaming. "Love isn't enough, Harry. I need someone who's truly there for me." External pressures deepened their rift. Paparazzi relentlessly trailed Chelsy, snapping her every move, every glance at Harry. The British press, with characteristic cruelty, mocked her as unfit to be a prince's wife, warning she'd drag Harry into a scandalous abyss. Meanwhile, the palace quietly tightened its grip. Charles's advisors repeatedly suggested to Harry his duty to the crown, warning that an unstable relationship could harm the monarchy's image. Those words, though polite, cut like knives into Harry's heart. Just 2 months after William and Kate's wedding, on a summer evening in 2011, Chelsy and Harry faced each other in her small London flat. The soft glow of a lamp lit Chelsy's face where silent tears traced her cheeks. She sat on the sofa, arms wrapped around herself, as if to hold her breaking heart together. "I can't keep going, Harry," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "I can't stand being watched, judged. I don't want a life where I can't be myself. And I can't wait for someone who's never truly mine." Harry, standing before her, felt the world collapse. He stepped forward, knelt beside her, and took her hands, his voice almost pleading. "We can get through this, Chels. I'll protect you. I'll change everything, I promise." But they both knew those were empty words. Chelsy looked into his eyes, her gaze both pained and steadfast. "You can't change the palace, Harry, and I don't want you to choose between me and your family. But I can't sacrifice myself either." She pulled her hands away, stood and turned to hide her tears. "I need to be free, and so do you." That moment, like a final blade, severed the last thread holding them together. Harry stood frozen, unable to speak, feeling his heart shatter. Chelsy, with all her love and pride, chose to leave to save herself and to free Harry from the burden of a love that couldn't survive in his world. In a rare interview with The Times later, Chelsy shared, "I couldn't handle always being the one watched. I didn't want that life." But those close to her revealed a harsher truth. She didn't walk away on her own. She was pressured. The palace never wanted her to stay. An insider recounted that before the breakup, Chelsy received subtle suggestions from royal advisors that she was unsuitable for a prince's wife. Those gentle words cut off all her hopes. Combined with Harry's military absences and the palace's relentless pressure, Chelsy saw no choice but to leave. Chelsy left London for South Africa, starting anew. She launched her own jewelry company, living the free, independent life she always dreamed of. She never publicly criticized the royals or recounted what happened. But in her eyes, when Harry's name came up, a flicker of regret lingered. She had loved him, and perhaps a piece of her heart still did. But she knew in that palace love was never enough. Harry, after Chelsy's departure, stood alone on Clarence House's balcony, gazing at London's twinkling lights. He clutched the leather bracelet Chelsy gave him, a small token from Botswana, where they once dreamed of a shared future. That bracelet was now the only relic of a love the palace had strangled. For the first time, he felt true loneliness, not just from losing Chelsy, but from realizing that in the world of the crown, his love could never be free. That night under London's sky, Harry stood silent, his heart heavy, unaware that this loss would shape his path forever. After Chelsy Davy left, Prince Harry's life sank into a somber void. London, with its bustling streets and dazzling lights, suddenly felt colder than ever. He was no longer the vibrant young man who raced through Botswana's plains with Chelsy. Instead, the Harry of 2011-2013 was a man scarred by loss, not just of the woman he loved, but of his faith that his love could defeat the royal system. The presses always gave him no peace. They linked him to new names: Cressida Bonus, an actress and model with ethereal beauty; Florence Brudenell Bruce, an aristocratic girl with a charming smile. But none stirred Harry's emotions like Chelsy had. Those relationships, if they existed, were mere breezes, unable to move his wounded heart. Instead of seeking love, Harry threw himself into work. He served in military campaigns in Afghanistan, devoted himself to charity projects, and tried to fill the void in his soul with far-flung travels. But each night when the lights dimmed, he faced the truth: without Chelsy, he wasn't himself. In 2013, Harry returned to Botswana, their former paradise. Alone by the Limpopo River under a starlit sky, he sat on a rock, his gaze lost in the quietly flowing water. Here they had watched sunsets, dreamed of a future without the palace or press, just pure love. His breath grew heavy, each memory of Chelsy a dagger in his heart. In that moment, Harry pulled out a small notebook and began to write a 3-page handwritten letter, his script trembling, addressed to Chelsy in South Africa. "I thought I'd marry you here, Chels." He wrote his words steeped in nostalgia and pain. "I thought our love was strong enough to conquer anything, but I was wrong. I didn't protect us, and no one in the palace stood by me." Those lines weren't just an apology, they were a confession of a man realizing his powerlessness against a ruthless system. He wrote of sleepless nights, the loneliness of standing in crowds, and the regret of not fighting harder for her. "You deserve to be free," he concluded, "but I'll always regret letting you go." The letter was never made public. Sent in secret, Chelsy, now building a new life in South Africa, kept it in a small wooden box, never sharing it with anyone. But a close friend of Harry's, the only one to read it before it was sent, said it was the first time he saw Harry cry over a woman other than his mother. Under Botswana's stars, Harry was no prince, just a broken man holding the fragments of a vanished dream. Meanwhile, Prince Charles, when asked about Harry and Chelsy's relationship, remained icy. "My son's personal matters are not for discussion," he said evenly, as if Harry's love was a trivial detail in the chess game of power. But a chilling passage in a former royal advisor's memoir reads, "A future king need not be perfect, but the second in line must not disrupt the narrative." Harry, though a prince, was just a pawn in a game the palace had played for centuries, and Chelsy, no matter how much she loved him, was never allowed to be his queen. To understand why Harry and Chelsy couldn't be together, we must look at the deep scars of the British monarchy, the painful precedents that shaped the fate of love in the palace. William loved Kate Middleton, but she endured nearly a decade of waiting 2 breakups, media mockery, as weighty Katie, in rigorous molding to fit the palace's ideal. Prince Charles loved Camilla Parker Bowles, but was forced to marry Princess Diana for the monarchy's image, leading to a disastrous marriage the world witnessed. Diana, beloved by millions, was thrust into a cold system where her loves James Hewitt, Hasnat Khan, only brought more pain and isolation. Chelsy Davy, with all her intelligence, charm, and free spirit, had no chance of surviving that system. She was too independent, too authentic, unwilling to stand behind Harry for the palace's perfect photo op. She refused to be trained to trade her identity for a place in the royal portrait. And so she was eliminated not by a public decree, but by being pushed to the sidelines, left out of history's frame. When Meghan Markle entered Harry's life in 2016, she wasn't Chelsy's replacement. She was the only one the system hadn't yet managed to discard. Meghan, a Hollywood actress with steely eyes and a resilient heart, was no stranger to the spotlight, to rumors, or to prejudice. She didn't fear the press, didn't flinch at vicious articles, and crucially didn't need the palace's approval. When she met Harry, he was no longer the young prince waiting for his father's or advisor's permission to love. He was a man who had lost too much his mother, his love, and his trust in the system he once called family. Meghan came after the war was over. Those who had stood by Harry Chelsea Cressida bonus had fallen silently under the palace's pressure. Harry was once the 12-year-old boy walking behind his mother's coffin, forbidden to cry on camera. He grew up in a world where every emotion was censored, every decision weighed for the good of the crown. And when he loved Chelsea, she too was placed on the chessboard of power, where she never stood a chance. But with Meghan, everything changed. When he went public with their relationship in 2016, Harry sought no one's permission. He issued a bold statement condemning the press for racist and abusive articles, targeting Meghan, an unprecedented act in royal history. When he proposed in 2017, he asked only his heart. And when he chose to step back from senior royal duties in 2020, he didn't wait for the palace's green light. Harry had learned a brutal lesson from Chelsea: if he didn't stand up for the woman he loved, the system would crush them. In Spare, Harry mentions Chelsea only briefly, but those passages brim with nostalgia and guilt. He writes of Botswana, dazed Chelsea's smile, and the pain of realizing he couldn't keep her. Not because Chelsea was more special than Meghan, but because she was proof of his powerlessness against the system. Chelsea was the love he couldn't hold, the dream the palace strangled before it could bloom. Meghan didn't win a romantic contest. She arrived when no one else could be eliminated. If Harry and Chelsea's love was a silent battle with the palace, Meghan was the public rebellion after that war had claimed too much. Meghan wasn't the woman Harry loved most. She was the one he dared to love without fear of prohibition. Harry and Chelsea's story isn't just a romance cut short. It's a testament to the cost of loving in a system where power trumps emotion. Chelsy Davy, with all her pride and freedom, chose to leave to preserve herself. Harry, after losing her, learned that love cannot survive if it must kneel before the crown. Meghan Markle is more than Harry's wife. She's the symbol of the change he craved: a world where he could love without permission, live without fear. But to reach Meghan, Harry had to endure losses the palace never acknowledged. Chelsy Davy wasn't the loser. She was the one who showed Harry that sometimes true love means letting go, so both can be free. In Botswana's sunset, where Harry once dreamed of a wedding with Chelsea, he likely still holds a small corner of his heart for her. Not because he loves her more than Meghan, but because she taught him that love, no matter how beautiful, cannot defeat a system that never changes. Yet that lesson gave Harry the strength to break his chains, to love Meghan, and to live the life he always dreamed of, a life of freedom. What do you think? Could Harry and Chelsea have changed their fate if the palace hadn't intervened? And would Harry have left the monarchy as he did if he had married Chelsea?